What's up, middle school students? I have one important thing to say to you tonight. It is, you can't fool all the people all the time, but if you fool the right ones, then the rest will fall behind. Tell me who's got control of your mind, your worldview? Is it the news or the movie you're taking your girl to? Just kidding, that's not really what I had to say, but I really like hip-hop, and that's a song that I really like. My name's Paul. I'm part of the worship arts staff here at Blackhawk. I hope everybody's having a good time at home group tonight. I have a really cool story to walk us through in the Bible. The Bible sometimes can be really hard to understand, but other times it can be pretty clear. And I think this is one of those really cool stories that's actually pretty easy for us to understand, and it can have a pretty strong impact on how we see the world and how we see other people. So if you have a Bible, go ahead and open it up to Luke chapter 10, verse 25. We're going to dive into a really famous parable of Jesus. It's called the parable of the good. Okay, that's, you can fill in it when you can say the word when I go like that. The parable, one more time. The parable of the Good Samaritan. Very good. All right, so it starts here in verse 25, chapter 10. On one occasion, an expert in the law stood up to test Jesus. So this guy thinks, I'm gonna show all these people this Jesus. He's not as smart as he thinks he is. I'm gonna test him. So he stood up and he said, "Teacher, what must I do to inherit eternal life?" And so Jesus responds, "What is written in the law? How do you read it?" And then this guy, this sort of smarty pants guy who thinks he's going to get Jesus, he says, "Love the Lord your God with all your heart and with all your soul and with all your strength and with all your mind. And love your neighbor as yourself." And Jesus is like, "You have answered correctly. Do this and you will live." But smarty pants guy, he still isn't quite done. He thinks he's going to get Jesus here. He says, but the smarty pants guy, he wanted to justify himself. He asked Jesus, he thinks he's got him here. He says, "Well, who is my neighbor?" And he's like, "Oh, shoot, I just totally stumped Jesus. What's he going to say now? Who's my neighbor?" So Jesus replies this way. He replies in a parable. Jesus does these parables so that it's not the easy answer that's just like, do this, da-da-da-da-da, check it off the list. But he kind of wants us to think about it a little bit, kind of think about how it might play out in real life. So Jesus, in response to the question, "Who is my neighbor?" he says this. "A man was going down from Jerusalem to Jericho when he fell into the hands of robbers. They stripped him of his clothes, beat him, and went away, leaving him half dead. A priest, a religious guy, happened to be going down the same road. And when he saw the man, he passed on the other side." I don't want to have anything to do with that, he thought. "So too, a Levite, when he came to the place and saw him, passed on the other side. But a Samaritan, as he traveled, came where the man was, and when he saw him, he took pity on him. He went to him and bandaged his wounds, pouring on oil and wine. Then he put the man on his own donkey, took him to an inn, and took care of him. The next day he took out 2 silver coins and gave them to the innkeeper. 'Look after him,' he said, 'and when I return, I will reimburse you for any extra expense you may have.'" And then Jesus asks this question: "Which of these 3 do you think was a neighbor to the man who fell into the hands of robbers?" The expert in the law, Mr. Smarty Pants, he said, "Well, it was the one who had mercy on him." And Jesus said, "Go and do likewise." I think this is a really challenging parable for us. A lot of times, Christ followers like to think about the really cool, exciting things that we can do to reach people, to help people. And middle school does Madison Missions, and this is a really cool, awesome thing that happens all summer long where you go out in the community and you serve people that you may or may not know, a lot of people that you won't know. And Blackhawk does trips to Africa, Romania, Peru, Honduras. The middle school ministry goes all the way up to Alaska, all because Jesus says we're supposed to care about other people. We're supposed to care about helping other people. And this parable reminds us that the people we're supposed to care about first and foremost are the people right in our path. We can ask ourselves the same question that Smarty Pants asked Jesus: who's my neighbor? And the answer that Jesus gives us in this story is, well, who's laying in your path? It's kind of a way of saying, who's in your life right now? Who do you know right now that you can show mercy to? Whether it's at work, if you have a job, or whether it's at school, whatever it is. Whatever circle you're a part of, whatever things you do where you're around other people, you can ask yourself the question, who is in your path right now? And the question we have to ask ourselves, and it's a hard question, are we going to be like the Levite? Are we going to be like the priest? And are we going to go on to the other side of the road and kind of walk around those people? Are we going to ignore that weird girl or that mean kid? Well, maybe he's in your path for a reason. Maybe you can somehow find a way to be a friend to him, to show mercy to that person. When I was in school, I remember really well, there was a night when a group of people were standing around and, everybody was just sort of talking and making jokes, just hanging out. And this one girl was sort of the brunt of a few of the jokes. That is to say, she was sort of getting picked on. People were kind of just a little bit making fun of her, and it was one of those situations, I know you know the situation, where everybody in the circle kind of knows that she's kind of the weird one, right? So it's kind of the unspoken thing. Everybody's thinking, oh, that's her. She's just sort of awkward. Let's see if we can get away from her as quickly as we can. So everybody sort of started to walk away, and this girl sort of started to stay where she was. And everybody was walking away, and this girl stayed where she was, and then she started going in the other direction. It was very clear that she didn't feel welcome. She didn't feel like she belonged. And I'm a Christ follower at the time, and so I'm sitting here literally watching this happen, watching all of my friends, all of the cool people, all of the people that I like to hang out with go that way, and then watching the weird girl go this way, knowing that she had been made fun of, that she had been sort of, ditched by the group. So I had a choice to make. Am I going to do the easy thing and go with my friends and ignore this girl like they're ignoring this girl, or am I going to go spend some time with this girl? Well, that night, by the grace of God, I think I made the right decision by going to hang out with this girl. And it turns out that we were able to have a really great conversation. I got to know her a little bit. She got to know me a little bit. I got to hear some of her story about why she is the way that she is. And she told me later that it meant so much to her that I was willing to just take a few minutes to just talk to her like a normal person, and that I didn't ditch her like everybody else. So I think, we as Christ followers come up against these situations all the time. Maybe right there in your home group, where we see all of our friends, all the people we like to hang out with, all the people that are really fun to hang out with, we see them going one way, and we maybe see other people kind of left out, going another way. So I would encourage you, students, as you face these types of situations in your life, to think about the Good Samaritan. Think about the question, who's my neighbor? Who's my neighbor? Think about the fact that the Good Samaritan wants us to see our neighbor as whoever is in our path, right there and then, no matter who they are. It doesn't matter who they are. See them, have mercy on them, and then, it's like Jesus says. When we see that happen in the parable of the Good Samaritan, Jesus says to go and do likewise. So, go and do likewise.